Okay, so welcome to WordPress Northeast. Thank you to sponsors who provide some of the free beers, although I think we sold a lot of theirs, so good work on that. And also the space and things for free. We've just got one speaker tonight, which is Benjamin Church from Timing Digital, and he's going to speak on how to optimize Google Maps for your WordPress website. Okay, yeah, good intro.
So, yes, hello. I'm Benjamin Church and I'm going to talk to you, as Richard said, about optimizing Google Maps. So for WordPress, I've got to be honest, not a lot of it's got to do with WordPress. There are a few key points and some little things like one of the big WordPress SEO plugins, Yoast, actually does now this really badly automatically. So if you blindly trust Yoast, I'll show you why you shouldn't do that. And a couple of other things. So I'm not going to say I do this and I do that. Now this has possibly set me up for a fail because I had to go and change all these images yesterday because the day before I was number 2. And then I flipped around to number 1. So I could be back to number 2, I don't know. But everything I'm talking through is stuff I've done for myself, stuff I do for clients, and elements of different training I've spent lots of time and money on to bring together into this kind of system that I follow myself. So, first thing to do before you do any of it is to do a bit of planning and preparation, and to be careful of taking some of the basics for granted. It's quite easily done. So obviously you need an address and location you're targeting for this to work. I've tried it. I'm experimenting partly with my own listing, experimenting trying to target Newcastle, being based in Gateshead. So far, no luck. I'm not convinced it's ever going to work. You need to be in the location you're targeting. Obviously, you need to verify your Google My Business listing. I'm not going to talk about that. They've got instructions you can follow for that. You need a website, and you need to do some keyword research to find search results that actually trigger map listings, because otherwise, well, how do you know what to target? That bit can potentially come later, but it's best just to get it all done. So this is what I mean about not taking the basics for granted. So you think you know your name of your business, you think you know your address, but actually this may not be true. The classic example here from Sintons, who I found this by searching personal injury solicitors in Newcastle and seeing who was 4th in the maps listing and just looking at what they put their address as. So you can see the name they've given to Google is different to the name that they've chosen to put on their website and probably elsewhere online as well. So follow what Google has for you, copy and paste that, keep a master document that has that information in it for yourself or if you're doing this to clients, and always take the address from that. Always go with what Google does. This is maybe a little harsh, the Barrack Road. You can get away with abbreviations. That's not, Google's clever enough to understand the similarities. But if you're going to go and do all this, I prefer to be specific. It's just better all around to get into that habit. So yeah, just take everything from your own listing and have it exactly as it appears there. So then the other thing you need to do is research your eligibility to actually appear in Maps rankings in the first place. Because the Maps algorithm is a little more basic than the organic one. They've started to blend the organic and the maps, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. This varies from location to location and between industries. So all you can really do is research it. And so it just comes down to these 3 different types. You've got connected blend, where maps results and organic results appear in exactly the same order. Number 1, assuming various other criteria is fulfilled and you're showing up in maps, if you're number 1 in ranking, you'll be beating number 2 or number 3 or number 4 if they fulfill the same criteria, and so on. And there's the disconnected blend where your organic results are kind of taken into account, but it's not strictly in the same order. Generally speaking, for a disconnected blend, you need to be on the top 2 pages, in the first 2 pages of organic results to actually stand a chance of getting the maps rankings in the first place. With a connected blend, you usually need to be on page 1. And for unblended, obviously, no correlation at all, doesn't matter. That's happening less and less, as we really are seeing the blends more and more. So as an example, again, sticking with SEO Gateshead and the different organic rankings that we've got, myself currently number 1 organic rankings, MediaWorks number 14 on page 2, and Bramble number 11. So you can see that's a disconnected blend. It's not sticking strictly to the same order as organic listings. Then the other element is actually researching your keywords. So this is a little simpler for Google Maps. It really just comes down as to whether it's actually triggering the map listing or not. If Google is treating the search with local intent, such as best SEO company Gateshead, clear buyer intent, somebody's looking for quality, they're looking for, they're looking for services in a particular location. But then as soon as you drop the Gateshead, the maps listing stops showing. Now this is possibly, arguably unusual, and you've got to do the research. If you search personal injury solicitors, you'll usually get a local map pack because Google knows where you are anyway. So it's important to be aware of the search intent and how Google sees it rather than what you think it might be. And obviously you can see here the organic listings. So this all applies to organic as well. Organic listings are kind of affiliate sites, review sites, directory sites, compared to a search of SEO, which is seen as purely research. There's no buyer intent. I think hundreds of thousands of people search for it, and there's people spending lots of money on advertising, but really that's only good for brand awareness. It's not high intent traffic that's ready to buy. So it's important to be aware of the different types of keywords and the different meanings behind them. So yeah, the next step is actually optimizing your Google My Business listing itself. So select the main category. So this is perhaps foolish because I'm showing you how to go and compete with me, but there it is. If you look, again, it comes down to the research. Look at what the top ranking competitors are using as their main category. Be specific. Again, stick with the kind of solicitor's example. You can select being personal injury solicitor or attorney, because there's lots of Americanisms in it all. But and that's what you should do if that's your specialisation. Really be specific and look at what the majority rankers are using. So you can see possibly Bramble are maybe open to being overtaken by another company that's based in Gateshead. Then you've got to choose your secondary categories. So this is quite a fluid process to start with. You can just type different ideas into the back end of Google My Business, but you can then go a step further and reverse engineer what your competitors have got. So if you visit their listing, right click on the blue section and visit View Page Source, and then do a Command and F, and search for their main service. With a backslash, you will get taken to a list of everything that they've selected. And this proves quite useful to me. For example, I think when I searched for e-commerce, I typed it as all one word, so it didn't show up. So I didn't know that was an option. So it's good to make sure you're covering all the bases that you can. There is a little video I've done on that, going through the process, but I'll make these slides available to you, and you can access that through those. So the next step, once you've got all your categories selected, is to optimize your images. And this is a kind of striking a balance. This comes back to keyword research, using words that you found that trigger a Google Maps listing and naming your images using those words, but at the same time balancing that with being quite natural. You don't want it to be you don't want to stuff keywords like digital marketing agency, personal injury over and over again. It's got to read quite naturally, and also be aware of the categories that you're going to upload these images to, because there are 5 different categories. And if I were to put, say, that digital marketing agency image in my team category, it wouldn't make any sense where you might expect somebody's name to appear. But it could be their name and their position, which may well include some keywords. There are ways to kind of work around that. Come in. Yes. Yes. Come in, take a seat. So yeah, you've got to strike a nice balance with that. But you want at least 5 images in each category, except identity, where you can only do it's fixed what you can put in there. The next level is to add your GPS coordinates to each image that you upload, and choose images you'd also be happy to put on your website for the stage a little later. So the best bet, again, keeping things natural, is if you're taking images with your smartphone, then put your GPS on and have it record the data anyway. But you can add it later in EXIF data using a couple of tools that I've listed there. There's various options. I think you can do it natively in Windows with a right click and go into properties, but it's not something I've done myself. And be prepared to be happy to use these images on your website a little later on. Now this is another thing that they've moved quite a while ago, but still seems to be quite significant. So this used to be baked into Google My Business. where you could add an introduction about your business and it would be part of the listing. And they moved it, but it's still important, it's still related. And I've found adding a kind of rich and keyword sensitive article to that section, the story section, even brought up more organic keywords as well as helping to trigger the map listing for additional searches. And again, it doesn't have to be Shakespeare, but keep it reading naturally. Don't stuff keywords into it. Talk around the topic. Don't repeat your location. There's lots and lots of indication of where you are already, but you can talk about maybe suburbs or nearby cities that you might want to try and trigger a map listing for. That's the place to put it. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell for your listing itself. There aren't a lot of opportunities, as I say, to add content to a Google My Business listing, so it's really important to take those opportunities when you get them. Any questions on that section before I move on? No?
Just in relation to kind of you said about like keywording images.
Yeah.
I suggested maybe sort of putting the folders in the structure as well that are kind of named after the things as well, or would it just read the image name, or would it leave the location of them as well?
Sorry, say that again.
Just in terms of putting images up,
Yeah.
is it just the name of the image that's going to be relevant, or is it going to be the folder?
Yeah, so it's just a name, because it will only upload the images, nothing, no structure that the images are in. So yeah, just about the images. So yeah, then the next step is to optimise your website. Now, a bit of a caveat on this. This depends on how many locations you've got. I know I heard somebody talk earlier about having two offices in different locations. So if you've got one location, you can do everything I'm about to talk about site-wide. It's what I've done myself, kind of putting these things in the footer and so on. If you've got more than one location, it needs to be done individually on a page dedicated to that location. And also, something I hadn't mentioned on the slides, that location page is what your Google My Business listing should link to, because you can set a custom URL. There's also people have apparently had great results with also putting Facebook pages as a URL, and that apparently can give them quite a boost, but it's not necessarily recommended long-term sustainable thing. So yeah, this varies a little bit depending on how many locations you've got. So the first thing is embed your business listing from Google Maps straight onto your website. Photo widget is where you can see mine there. Link your NAP, so name, address and phone number, to the listing itself. Really show the connection between the two. Leave nothing to the imagination. And now this is where I want to talk to you a little bit about Yoast, because obviously it's the sort of thing, maybe if you don't know that much detail about SEO, you go in and go through the optimization process and think that it's going to take care of stuff like this, but it's not. So Yoast will automatically add an organization schema or a person schema. Generally, this is aimed at businesses, so most people will have chosen that they're a company, and this is what it puts in. But what you want is much more detail that you can see on the other side. So to introduce schema, if you're not aware of it, I'm sure there's some people who have written it and familiar with it, and other people maybe haven't heard of it before. It's like specialist code that was created by a very rare collaboration between massive corporate competitors like Google and Yahoo and Bing got together to make this readable, because that's how much they want people to use it. And I've seen adding this alone make a difference to organic rankings as well. It really does make a big impact, because they want this information, and you can go so specific as to identify which social media profiles are yours, what your GPS coordinates are, what your price range is, and so on and so forth. So all sorts of detail that they really want to have. And Yoast can't do this, won't do this. It will do a sort of light version of it. Local business inherits from organisation, so this is like local business light, and it's not quite good enough for what we need to truly optimise the website. So the way to avoid that is to make sure you just leave that option unchecked. So don't choose whether you're a company or a person, and it won't put in any inadequate schema code. Better ways to implement it. I do quite like WP Schema Pro. It's fairly flexible and easy to use. Otherwise, you can write the code manually and insert it, paste it into the header, or insert it via Google Tag Manager. It's probably the slightly neater way to do it. And because I've done this so many times, I've ended up creating a spreadsheet that fills in a lot of it for me. I can just go and paste in the details from the master sheet that I talked about before, and it will generate the code for me. So I've made that available to you if you want to go and use it. There's also, again, a little video talking about how to use it, which again I'm not going to talk through this time because it's probably getting a little too finicky for the time that I've got, but it's there if that would help you out. And then this, I'm just going to touch on this quite briefly, but this is arguably the bulk of the work. But going and telling Google all of that stuff on your listing is not enough. You've got to prove it, because anybody can go and create that listing, but you've got to back it up. And so the way to do this is to create pages dedicated to the categories. Google's telling you the language that it thinks is important by the very fact of those categories. They're showing you that these words are significant. So essentially you need to have those words on your website. So just as I say, create URLs, create pages that are specific to those categories, and then write content based on the keyword research you did earlier to help trigger more listings. So use the categories in H1 or H2 tags, use the qualifying keywords in the in kind of subheadings below that, and make sure you talk around that particular category. Use lots of synonyms. Google's great at understanding topics, and it rewards sites that talk about topics, and that will help you trigger Google Maps listings for those particular keywords. And also, as I mentioned before, embed an image that you've optimized and added to your Google My Business listing. So you can see really you've now got your website and your Google My Business listing communicating, and they're very clearly connected. The language is backing up the language that Google My Business uses, and yeah, there's no arguing with the solidity of that kind of footprint of your online presence. But that's not all. I'm afraid that's probably the only WordPress bit as well. Sorry. A lot of this comes down to absolutely everything else, and you could do it on any platform, to be honest. So the next step is off-site optimization. Does anybody have any questions on the kind of on-site first? Yes.
I don't know if you said it, I don't know if I missed it, but earlier on you mentioned it in NAB, and email something on the slides. NAB?
Yeah.
What was that?
That stands for name, address and phone number.
Okay.
It's actually, I'm going to be talking about that a lot more in this. It's most significant for this section.
No,
so yeah, the NAP, name, address and phone number, is what you should be taking from your Google My Business listing. So really you need to get your listing verified before you start any of this, because it can actually change. I've had it change for clients between it being unverified and verified. Suddenly something changes. So before you start putting any of this in place, get your listing verified, and then take it from there.
Have you ever seen anyone use Google Maps listings for outlets for their products rather than the business itself?
Yes. Yes and no. It's actually something I meant to mention at the start, so I'm glad you asked it. It's something that I personally do for clients that are maybe e-commerce clients or software as a service clients who maybe aren't local businesses, because I can't see any way that this isn't a massive trust factor from Google's point of view. So the listings themselves may not, generate sales, but it will add to your overall kind of organic SEO quite strongly. Does that answer your question? So yeah, it's got to be a massive trust factor. But a lot of that, possibly coming from if you are a non-local business and you're more national or international, this side of things is probably the more important. Actually, getting the listing set up. And then getting this footprint elsewhere on the net is arguably the most important thing. So this comes down to citations. So a citation is anywhere that your name, address and phone number or NAP appears online. It can be anywhere at all. Typically it's in directory websites like the likes of Yelp and so on and so forth. They're kind of the most common ones. But it doesn't have to be. It really can be anywhere at all, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So why build them? This is a little comment that I made that I thought summed it up fairly well. So it's all about data aggregation. So Google looks to authority data aggregators. Factual is the main one in the UK. So you need to make sure that you submit accurate information to Factual. Google looks at them and then confirms that elsewhere online as well. So, and the more consistent citations you have all saying that you are this business and you are where you say you are, the kind of more trust there is in your business. And the higher up and more sustainable your Google My Business rankings will be. So that's what it all comes down to. Now people have started to talk about citations possibly not being as effective as they once were. And I think from my own experience and talking to a few other people that actually a lot of this comes down to the citations not staying indexed in Google. So people, they have a description of the business that they've either taken from the website or ideally written uniquely, and then they just copy and paste it onto all the different directory sites that they visit. And so Google sees all that duplicate content and it's not bothered by it, but it's like there's no point in keeping that in our index, so we'll get rid of 70% of it. So you go through all this effort creating all these citations and Google doesn't look at more than half of them. So it's important to get in the habit of creating unique articles and unique content, write a unique description of your business each time, or get somebody else to do it. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare again, it just needs to be identifiably unique to help keep those citations within Google's index. But otherwise, try and be complete. There's no standards because every site's different, will have different requirements, but add everything that you can add. That you've possibly got images, videos, various different details. And as I say, make sure you always copy your name, address and phone number from that master list that master sheet that you put it into in the first place directly from your listing. So I just want to talk a little bit about the order to create these in. So you want to start with fundamental listing the site, so obviously Google My Business, but particularly there's also Apple Maps and Bing Places, and also Yahoo Local. They're good places to start, get those all verified and active. Then, as I say, factual is an important one. There are another 3 or 4 for the US, but for UK purposes, factual is the one to go to. And then really well-known, kind of internationally recognised directory sites like Yell and Yelp and Scoot. And you'll find there are some directories, like The Sun has a directory, but they take all of their information from Scoot, so you can't submit to The Sun. And various others you can't submit to, but by submitting to other services like Scoot, you'll get there eventually. Then, you want to reverse engineer what your competitors have already got. Now this is a little search operator you can use to do that. So if you put their phone number in site quotes and then -site : their domain name, you'll get a list of all of the citations that business has indexed within Google. So then you want to go and create as many of those as you can. So now you've got all your authority citations, all the citations that your competitors have got. So you've kind of at least matched them. And then you take it a step further, several steps further. Look at all the other national kind of more authority citations, any industry-specific citations that are relevant to your industry, local citations like Chronicle and the Chamber of Commerce. And I know there's a directory site dedicated to Newcastle businesses as well. I think it might be yournewcastle.com or something like that. Anything like that is all going to help. And then you can go a step further and create unstructured citations by dropping your name, address and phone number into YouTube descriptions, share image sharing sites, and also utilise Google properties as well. Google loves Google, so that's why a YouTube citation is worth having. That's one of the first to go and create. Blogspot as well, their blogging platform. Always look to utilise Google properties for things like this. And that is pretty much it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
How do you know how effective things like Scoot are?
Well, it's difficult to measure the effectiveness of any individual one. I mean, I say that applies to SEO overall. It's always a combination of lots and lots of small things that add up to make a big difference. I mean, Scoot, I'd say, is one of the particularly effective ones because it feeds out to sites like the Sun's directory that you won't get any other way. And it's difficult to discern whether, if you were to remove that, that would be the way to find out, would be to test it, but it would be probably not good use of time. It's better to have it than not to have it. and you want to be as thorough as you can, I would say. Does that answer your question?
I've been paying £18 a month for the last 6-8 months,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, what am I paying for?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's Well, this is. I mean, this is a theme with. I think there are other services like. I think Yoast might be one, and that there are a few services that purport to do all of this for you. And generally, I've found that what they do is kind of a bit incomplete. So I mean, it's good to be in Scoot, but I'm pretty sure I submitted to Scoot and I don't think I paid them anything. I'm sure you can do it free.
I've got a free one. I've got 2 companies, the other one I'm paying for.
Right, okay. Yeah, and personally I'm a little sceptical, but it's partly because I'm a control freak, so I like to try and have control of my accounts myself. And the other thing is with services like that, they'll always keep them there. You can't really verify exactly where it is, and how many sites are actually, how many of these important sites they're covering. And as soon as you stop paying them, then it's all gone anyway. So they've kind of got you, got you by the neck, and it's difficult to. So I mean, again, I'm arguably biased, but I like to get people to do it, and then have login details and know that it's done, because it doesn't have to be a recurring subscription. I don't think.
So I'm sure there will be other questions as well. With Scoot, if a client's ethics or morals didn't match with something like the Sun, can you specify I don't want to be in the Sun's directory or anything like that?
No, it's all totally automated. So the Sun just takes whatever is in that directory.
Businesses in Liverpool might not be so keen.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Any more questions for Ben?
I was going to ask more the paying. What's or where you're going to pay, or who should you pay?
Me?
Yeah, how many sites can you do without paying?
Quite a lot. I mean, there are some specific directories that you can't even create an account on without paying them a fee to do it. It's just particularly in kind of higher end niches like the law, and sometimes it can be worth getting that. If you're at a point where there's nothing much left to do, getting that extra edge is worth it. But there's a lot, because a lot of businesses just want your contact details in so they can phone you up to sell you stuff, to be honest. But it's worth that to kind of build up this authority. Yes?
It's sort of half a question, half a statement. If you're not really looking to try and attract people necessarily locally, because what you've got isn't necessarily a local thing.
Yep.
My thoughts are that by doing this, and ticking all the boxes for the locality thing, Google will give you a much greater rating as a website or organisation, so that if you're doing something which is of international interest, in my case I publish books, so it's really anywhere, just a particular title, because if I do this locality stuff, and that clearly gives me a credibility and authenticity, it will help on non-local. Is that an assumption I've made that's correct?
Well, no, I agree with you completely. I've made very much the same assumption, and like I say, I do this for. I've got a software as a service client who signed up a couple of months ago, and I'm starting to go through this process for him. It maybe doesn't have to be quite as detailed. Like you don't necessarily need all the keyword research to trigger map listings, because you've not got to trigger map listings. But you do need the listing. You do need photographs up there, and you need the listing complete, and then the citations around it. That will. If you're up against another book publisher that doesn't have that, then even in your organic rankings, it's going to give you extra credibility, definitely. Yeah. Yes?
Well, you've got multiple locations.
Yep.
Is that an individual page for each location? And then you're referring to individual pages on the website.
Yes.
So is it harder if they refer to the same website?
Yeah, it kind of muddies the waters for the local relevance. So each location should have its own sub-page where all the things I was talking about, like embedding a map, and then the schema code for each location should be on that one page. Yeah.
Just very quickly, could you just touch on stacking?
Stacking. Google property stacking
Yeah.
type stuff. Yeah.
A little bit, I don't understand it.
Yeah, so it's not something I do a great deal of myself. So this is the idea that again comes back to Google loves Google. So if you create a YouTube video which you then embed in your Blogspot post, which you then take that post and share it in your Google Plus account, it will kind of build up authority through it. And it's a next level thing that in terms of like the 80-20 of what's going to make a difference, I tend not to bother until later on. There have been some tests that I've seen that show it does make a difference, but it's not massive. Anything else? Great, well thank you all very much. I hope that's proved helpful. I think I might nip round the corner to the pub for a couple of beers if anybody wants to ask any questions.
Be careful from the talk.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Okay.